Hello and a very warm welcome. We are coming to you live from the WION headquarters in Noida, India. It's 9 p.m. IST. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. What is the story behind the China-Russia Ice Silk Road in the Arctic? Why does China want to build the Polar Silk Road? What is the project all about? What is its aim? What is it aimed at? On Gravitas tonight, we focus on these questions and more as part of our top story coming up shortly. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. What is Hezbollah's low-tech solution to counter Israel's high-tech weapons? Is the solution working? What's the latest? We get to the lowdown. What is the story of China's so-called monster ship in the South China Sea? Why is it making headlines? Are insects the food of the future? As Singapore approves 16 species of insects as safe for human consumption, we get you some food for thought tonight. All this and more coming up. Our top story tonight is about a Silk Road. It is about a perfectly timed leak by one country to try and dampen the spirit of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Russia. Which country could it be? China? You will find out. Let me first tell you all about the new Silk Road. This is a project made possible by climate change and necessitated by faster changing geopolitics. In the Arctic, the ice caps are melting, the summers are becoming longer. China has seen an opportunity in this distress. Now that the Arctic Ocean is not all frozen through the year, why not use it for navigation? It was in 2017 that China first declared its aim to build a Polar Silk Road, an Arctic sea route connecting North America, East Asia, and Western Europe. This route would be part of Chinese President Xi Jinping's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. This is China's dream, what many Chinese academics, in fact, have also termed as the Golden Waterway. Like you can see, more than half of this Silk Route passes through the waters near Russia. For years, Russia has been trying to develop its northern coast. This is a region that is rich in resources. It has natural gas, it has oil, minerals. As per the estimates of U.S. Energy Information Administration, there are 90 billion barrels of undiscovered oil and reserves in the Arctic. That's how energy-rich this region really is. Russia's Far East and the Arctic regions used to be a mining hub in the Soviet times. Now the region is dreaming of becoming an important trade hub. For the Soviet Union, northern trade was a prestige goal. Today, for Russia, this trade route is a matter of strategic influence. It is about development, also safe trade. Russia has been working to develop this route for a while now. It is the only country to deploy nuclear-powered icebreakers. Russian icebreakers can sail through the Arctic even in the harsh winters. Russia hopes its efforts can pave the way to increase trade along its northern coast to increase tenfold in the next decade. And this is where the Chinese and the Russian dreams merge. Russia wants to develop the Northern Sea Route, and it wants a polar Silk Road. Cut to present. So on the 6th of July, the first Arctic Express train departed from Russia's Moscow region. It was bound for the northern port town of Arkhangelsk. The load would then travel through the seas to China. The news of this departure successfully made it to news. Was it meant to dampen the mood around Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Russia? Was Beijing desperately trying to underline a confirmation of Russia-China relations? Russia today is trading with China more than ever before, courtesy the war in Ukraine and the Western sanctions on Russia. In the year 2023, in fact, the bilateral trade between Russia and China was worth over $240 billion. In the first 5 months of 2024, the two countries have traded goods worth $94 billion. The Arctic Silk Route also helps Russia trade with other countries, with Asian countries. In fact, in the last few years, ships from Vladivostok have sailed to Chennai, to Kolkata, even the state of Odisha. These ships have brought coal and oil. When compared to the Suez route, the Northern Sea Route is faster. It saves time, energy, also cuts down on security risks. There are no Houthis waiting to attack ships. No NATO countries that Russia should be wary of. While the northern route is quicker or is as quick as the Suez Canal route, the sea rail service launched by China and Russia as part of the Silk Route make the journey even faster. Containers are railed from Moscow to Arkhangelsk, and then container ships carry the load to China through the ocean. The service covers around 13,000 kilometers over 20 to 25 days. That's a week faster than the Northern Sea Route. Now to the next big question. What is in it for China? Why does it want to develop the Polar Silk Road? You see, Beijing gets to spread its wings in the Arctic. Like we told you, this is a region that is rich in resources. China has not been shy of expressing its interest in the Arctic. It has become an active member of the Arctic Council. Beijing likes to call itself a near-Arctic state. It is believed that China even has its own programs for building nuclear icebreakers. It helps China to take the Arctic route. It gets to avoid the Malacca Strait, where the US has a huge presence. So here's another reason why the Arctic Silk Route is a win-win for both Russia as well as China. All said and done, every country is allowed to dream, but will this dream project be a success is the question, or will it go down the BRI road? Despite the war in Gaza, some 26,000 ships passed through the Suez Canal in 2023. How many took the northern route? 80. Also, one cannot help but take into account the fact that there are differences in how Russia and China view the Arctic. For Russia, the Arctic is its backyard in a way. China wants to make the Arctic international, a region where countries around the world have stakes, a region that China dominates. Isn't this a roadblock for Russia? Shifting focus now to West Asia, if you have been following the Israel-Hezbollah developments, you would see headlines like Hezbollah fires 200 rockets into Israel, Israeli army officer killed in Hezbollah rocket attack, or Hezbollah-Israel conflict heats up. If you have seen these headlines, I'm sure you must have asked yourself, how does a non-state actor like Hezbollah keep up the fight against a military giant like Israel? Well, the answer might surprise you. Hezbollah is going old school. Coded messages, landline phones, pagers. You heard that right. Hezbollah is using low-tech strategies to try and evade Israel's sophisticated surveillance technology, a simple yet effective measure to take on one of the world's most powerful militaries. According to news agency Reuters, the Lebanon-based group has also been using its own tech, like drones, to study and attack Israel's intelligence gathering capabilities. Hezbollah's leader, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, has described this as a strategy of blinding Israel. Remember, the two sides have been trading fire since the war started between Israel and Hezbollah's ally Hamas. While the fighting on Lebanon's southern border has remained relatively contained, stepped-up attacks have intensified in the recent weeks. All eyes are on this conflict in West Asia as fears grow that it could spiral into a full-scale catastrophic war. According to Reuters, Israeli strikes have killed more than 330 Hezbollah fighters and around 90 civilians in Lebanon. Israel says that attacks from Lebanon have killed 21 soldiers and 10 civilians. Israel also says that it is responding to quote-unquote unprovoked firing from Hezbollah. In the conflict, Israel has used electronic surveillance technology. The IDF has said it has security cameras and remote sensing systems trained on areas where Hezbollah operates. Israeli military is also regularly sending surveillance drones over the border to spy on its adversary. And what's more, Israel's electronic eavesdropping, including hacking into cell phones and computers, is also widely regarded as among the world's most sophisticated. Yet, Hezbollah has been able to sustain its fight. The Lebanon-based group has learned from its losses. They have adapted their tactics in response. Cell phones, which can be used to track a user's location, have been banned from the battlefield. Instead, a more old-fashioned means of communication is being used, including pagers and couriers who deliver verbal messages in person. Hezbollah is also reportedly using a private fixed-line telecommunications network, a network dating back to the early 2000s. And that's not all. They are using code words for weapons and meeting sites. Of course, Hezbollah's media office is yet to comment on the revelations, but it is clear Hezbollah is relying on low-tech countermeasures to sustain its conflict with Israel. Security experts are not surprised. They concur some low-tech countermeasures can be quite effective against high-tech spying. In fact, one of the ways that Al-Qaeda's late leader Osama bin Laden evaded capture for nearly a decade was by disconnecting from the internet and phone services. He also used couriers for communication. Not all agree that Hezbollah's strategy is effective. According to one former CIA analyst, just the simple act of not using a cell phone at all can make it much harder to find and fix a target. It can make Hezbollah's leadership far less effective at communicating rapidly with their troops. You see, Hezbollah and Lebanese security officials believe Israel has been tapping local informants as it zeroes in on targets. Hezbollah began suspecting that Israel was targeting its fighters by tracking their cell phones, in addition to monitoring video feeds from security cameras installed on buildings in border communities. In December 2023, Hezbollah had reportedly urged residents in southern Lebanon to disconnect any security cameras they own from the internet. And then by early February, another directive was issued to Hezbollah's fighters: no mobile phones anywhere near the battlefield. In fact, according to reports, Hezbollah would perform surprise checks on field units to see if members had phones on them. Hezbollah has been flaunting its ability to collect its own intelligence on enemy targets and attack Israel's surveillance installations using its arsenal of small, homemade drones. Remember, last month, Hezbollah published a 9-minute-long video which showed drone footage of the Israeli city of Haifa, the site of Israel's nuclear facility. Hezbollah says it has also shot down or taken control of half a dozen Israeli surveillance drones, including Hermes 450, Hermes 900 and the Skylark UAVs. After capturing the Israeli drones, Hezbollah operatives reportedly disassembled them in order to study their components. All simple strategies to try and counter Israel. Has the NATO already failed Ukraine? You see, after 2 years of the war, there is no end in sight to the biggest war in Europe since World War II. Who is responsible for this? Ukraine? Russia? The US? Or is it the NATO? Members of the US-led bloc are currently marking 75 years of the military alliance, a significant milestone as it faces an existential threat amid the Russia-Ukraine war. The leaders of the military alliance have gathered in Washington. They have pledged their support for Ukraine. They have promised to increase their defense spending. They have promised to send tactical air defense systems to Ukraine. But ask when the Ukraine war will be, Ukraine will be able to join the alliance, and the reason the war broke out in the first place, remember, the answer will be less than exciting. There is no clear date for Ukraine's NATO membership or when and how the war can actually come to an end. Despite its big promises, NATO, it seems, has failed Ukraine. On Tuesday, US President Joe Biden vowed more aid to Ukraine, aid that will shield them against deadly Russian attacks. Biden kicked off the NATO summit by promising donation of 5 air defense systems by Germany, Italy, Romania, the Netherlands, and the US. It represents just one element of NATO's ongoing campaign to help Kiev hold off a far larger, better armed adversary in Russia. Biden said, and I'm quoting here, "Make no mistake, Russia is failing," quote unquote. He promised the war will end with Ukraine remaining a free and independent country. To that we ask, when? When will the war in Ukraine end? Surely it won't end if you continue to arm the country instead of bringing them to the talking table. Furthermore, while NATO vowed to support Ukraine, it stopped short of offering Ukraine any concrete advances towards a membership. Look at the modest package of expected deliverables promised to Ukraine by the NATO. What does it tell you? Because to us, it looks like Ukraine's Western backers do not know how long they can help Ukraine prevail in the grinding war for survival. After all, Russia has managed to defy a barrage of Western sanctions. It is throwing more men into the battlefield. It is ramping up its military production, and its troops are cementing control over vast parts of Ukraine. Far more land than they first set out to achieve. It's not that the NATO has not supplied Ukraine with weapons. They have billions of dollars worth of military equipment, weapons, defense systems, artillery shells, as well as intelligence have been shared by the West to Ukraine throughout the course of the war, to the point that members of the NATO are running out of weapons for themselves. Yet, Ukraine's appetite for Western weapons has not been satiated. What's more, Ukraine has not been able to regain control of territories it lost to Russia and has lost more soldiers in the battlefield than it can afford to. Still, NATO leaders who have descended upon the US capital for that summit are trying to refocus attention away from Ukraine's gloomy battlefield outlook by highlighting the alliance's support for Kiev. In fact, the NATO Secretary General has cast the stakes of the Ukraine conflict in historic terms. He says that the opponents of democracy would benefit if Western nations fail to back Ukraine. He told leaders of the summit, and I'm quoting, "Remember, the biggest cost and the greatest risk will be if Russia wins in Ukraine. We cannot let that happen." Isn't it too late, though? According to reports, the latest NATO proposal would offer Ukraine an irreversible path towards NATO membership. But this would also include extensive language about the need for Ukraine to make anti-corruption and good governance changes before it can join the alliance. Biden is reportedly concerned that admitting Ukraine before it is ready could saddle the NATO with corruption challenges that would be hard to root out. He is not alone. Germany, as well as some southern and western European members, share the same concern. Even if Ukraine were to solve all of its problems, say tomorrow, there is a more fundamental challenge with inviting Ukraine into NATO now. The war is not over. So if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO now, it would basically drag the NATO into a full-blown war with Russia. But can the US lead the NATO into a potential war with Russia? Can NATO afford a direct war with Russia? The truth is, it cannot. It cannot start a war. It cannot finish. It's obvious now. It would be no exaggeration then to say that NATO has in fact failed Ukraine. Shifting focus now to India. The Army's elite para unit has now joined the search operations, and combing densely forested areas, forces are on the lookout for the terrorists responsible for Monday's attack in Jammu and Kashmir's Kathua. 5 soldiers were killed in the terror attack. Our next report getting you the latest.
In Kathua, a concerted effort is underway to nab the terrorists responsible for killing 5 Indian soldiers on Monday. The Indian Army has sent an elite para unit to Jammu and Kashmir. The special elite unit of the Indian Army is renowned for their exceptional skills in counter-terrorism, hostage rescue, and unconventional warfare. The unit is now at the forefront of the massive search operation. Members of this elite para unit bring in a level of expertise and precision that is unparalleled. Since their formation, the para unit has been involved in numerous high-stakes missions, from the India-Pakistan War of 1971 to Operation Blue Star of 1984, from the Kargil War of 1999 to the recent anti-terror operations across various theatres. Their ability to operate in hostile environments and execute precise strikes is what sets them apart. Supported by state-of-the-art technology, the para unit, alongside the forces of the Indian Army, CRPF, and Jammu and Kashmir Special Forces, are meticulously combing through the dense forests. Every step is taken with caution, using metal detectors to counter the threat of improvised explosive devices that could have been planted by the terrorists. The search is now extended to the adjoining districts of Udhampur and Kathua, covering areas like Basantgarh, Sioj, and the upper reaches of Bani, Daggar, and Kindli. The NIA team has also been dispatched. On Monday afternoon, terrorists hurled grenades and subsequently opened fire on army vehicles, conducting a routine patrol near Badnota village, located around 150 kilometers from Kathua town. The security forces retaliated, but before reinforcements could arrive, the terrorists fled to a nearby forest. Kashmir Tigers, a shadow outfit of Pakistan-based Jaish-e-Mohammed, has claimed responsibility for the attack. Jammu and Kashmir has recently seen a spike in terror activities, with intruders from Pakistan operating in small groups. There were at least 4 terrorist attacks last month. Bureau Report, WION world is one.
When it comes to projecting force, is bigger always better? Why am I asking that? It's because China has anchored the world's largest Coast Guard ship, a monster ship, if you will, in the South China Sea. Specifically speaking, China has deployed its monster ship inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. This deployment happened last week, and Philippine officials are calling it an act of intimidation amid the ongoing territorial dispute between Beijing and Manila in the South China Sea. According to the Philippines Coast Guard spokesperson, J. Tarela, the Chinese Coast Guard vessel has been anchored near Sabina Shoal. It is in the Spratly Islands, about 130 kilometers northwest of the Philippine island of Palawan. It is also well within Manila's 230-mile exclusive economic zone. So, what is this monster ship? It is TECCG 5901, displacing 12,000 tons and with a length of 541 feet. It is 3 times the size of the U.S. Coast Guard's main patrol vessels, hence the name the Monster. While at Sabina Shoal, the Chinese ship is anchored within 800 yards of one of Philippine Coast Guard's newest and biggest ships. The Chinese monster ship is more than 5 times the size of that Philippine ship. No matter the size, the Philippines refuses to be intimidated by China. They say they will not back down on their South China Sea claims. When asked, the Philippines claims during a regular press briefing on Monday, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs denied the area in question was part of the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Beijing said that they were in compliance with China's domestic law as well as international law. We are not surprised. You see, China claims indisputable sovereignty over almost all of the South China Sea, as well as most of the islands and sandbars within it. It includes many features that are hundreds of miles from mainland China. Multiple governments, including Manila, hold competing claims. In the year 2016, an international tribunal in The Hague ruled in favor of the Philippines in a landmark dispute which concluded that China has no legal basis to claim historic rights to the bulk of the South China Sea. Yet, Beijing ignored the ruling. Instead, China has increasingly pushed its maritime territorial claims, with Coast Guard ships being reinforced by militia boats involved in multiple clashes over the past year. These boats have damaged Philippine ships and seen Filipino sailors injured by water cannon. As recently as June, a clash near 2nd Thomas Shoal saw Chinese Coast Guard officers brandishing axe and other bladed tools at Filipino soldiers. They slashed their rubber boat, as per reports. A Filipino soldier even lost a thumb during the confrontation. All this is happening in the high seas, but it has been prowling the areas of the Philippines' exclusive economic zone since then. In fact, immediately following the violent standoff at the 2nd Thomas Shoal, the Chinese monster ship reportedly toured nearly every Philippine outpost and key feature in the South China Sea, and that's the main job of the CCG 5901, intimidation. Sure, the monster Chinese ship was not involved in that incident. It is larger than any regular Coast Guard ship in the world. It even outsizes American Navy destroyers. Naturally, its massive size enables it to intimidate its neighbors. It, in a way, gets the job done, and Beijing doesn't even have to send a Navy ship. Of course, in responsible countries, Coast Guards are usually assigned to law enforcement and search and rescue operations. And in most countries, Coast Guard ships are not normally expected to carry out military operations. But the Chinese Coast Guard It is part of China's armed police, which is under the command of the Central Military Commission. And that is the difference between the Chinese Coast Guard and other countries. For China, therefore, bigger is better. Is Pakistan no country for journalists? I ask that question because the safety of journalists in the country has hit a record low. 7 journalists have been killed this year. That's 7 journalists dead in 6 months. Can you believe that? This terrifying statistic marks the highest number of journalist fatalities in a single year in Pakistan's history. With half the year still remaining, experts are worried. Has freedom of press eroded beyond repair in Pakistan? Let me tell you about the most recent victim, Khalil Gibran, the former president of a local press club in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province bordering Afghanistan. He was ambushed while driving in June. According to reports, 2 men dragged him out of his car and shot him multiple times. Who killed Khalil Gibran? Who is behind this cold-blooded murder? We don't know. Chances are we will never know. But what we do know is that in Pakistan, this has become a regular affair. In fact, the Pakistan Task Force investigating these killings saying that at least 4 of the 7 cases this year are believed to be work-related. Most of these deaths have occurred in smaller towns and cities. In late May, journalist Nasrullah Gadani, known for his critical reporting on local politicians and feudal lords, was similarly killed in Sindh province's Badin district. His killing sparked massive protests. Gadani's family alleging that a local member of parliament was responsible for his murder. And just 3 days before Gadani's death, journalist Kamran Dawar was killed in North Waziristan. After these deaths, the General Secretary of the International Federation of Journalists responded to these deaths, saying, I'm quoting, journalists and media workers in Pakistan have a constitutional right to freedom of expression, but this is undermined by targeted attacks, assaults, and killings. Authorities must ensure that the media can work without fear and that these killings are thoroughly investigated, quote unquote. This is the reality in Pakistan. Journalists often find themselves targeted simply for doing their job. In fact, the country has fallen 2 places in this year's World Press Freedom Index, compiled and published by Reporters Without Borders. Pakistan now ranking 152 out of 180 countries in press freedom. It highlights Pakistan as one of the most dangerous countries in the world for journalists. According to the Freedom Network, a media watchdog, 53 Pakistani journalists were killed because of their work between 2012 and 2022. That's 53 journalists killed in 10 years. But only 2 cases resulted in convictions. I repeat, only 2 cases resulted in convictions. But freedom of speech cannot be curtailed, and that is why, despite the restrictions on mainstream media in Pakistan in a way, citizen journalism has surged thanks to social media. Citizens are taking it upon themselves to give a voice to the voiceless and report on the ground reality. Now, there are these disturbing stories that we must report. It is part of our job. And then there are stories that we love to tell, like the story of M. Anukathir Surya. He is an Indian Revenue Service officer. Anukathir is 35 years old, and he has become the first Indian civil service officer to change his name and gender in all official records. Anukathir is from Tamil Nadu. He started his civil service career in the year 2023. Back then, he was the Assistant Commissioner in the Central Board of Customs and Indirect Taxes in Chennai. Anukathir would be known as Miss M. Anasuya. In 2018, the IRS officer became a deputy commissioner. In 2023, he joined the Customs, Excise and Service Tax Appellate Tribunal in Hyderabad. During the course of his career, Anukathir appealed to the government to officially change his name and gender. On the 9th of July, an order was issued by the Ministry of Finance. It read, "The request of M. Anasuya has been considered. Henceforth, the officer will be recognized as Mr. M. Anukathir Surya in all official records." You know, this is such a beautiful story because here, not only do you have an Indian civil service officer holding his head high and embracing his gender transition, but you also have the government of India standing by this officer and dropping his dead name. What is a dead name, you ask? It is the birth name of a transgender person. Anukathir changed his name as part of his gender transition, and the government of India supported him. It removed Anukathir's dead name from the official records and replaced it with his chosen name. Are insects the food of the future? As strange or creepy as that sounds, more than 2 million people across the globe are estimated to consume insects daily. In fact, Singapore has just approved 16 different insect species to be eaten as food. For a second, visualize chocolates, soups, tacos, pastas and breads on the menu. And now imagine this. They are made primarily out of insects. Would you consume the items? And while you mull over that, let me tell you this. Insects have been identified by the UN Food and Agriculture Organization as an underutilized resource. Could they be an environmentally friendly way to get protein into your diet? Experts have identified that younger consumers are increasingly willing to make ethical, sustainable choices and incorporate insects into their diet. What was once considered unappetizing is slowly becoming accepted as a source of protein and a sustainable alternative to meat. Keeping that in mind, the Singapore Food Agency has approved the consumption of crickets, grasshoppers, locusts, honeybees, silkworms, moths, among others, to be safe for human consumption. Does that sound appetizing to you, or does it make your skin crawl? Here are some numbers for you. According to a study published earlier this year, around 128 countries worldwide consume over 2,000 different types of insect species. The report further highlighted that most of these species are eaten in Asian countries, followed by Mexico and African countries. With the climate crisis getting worse, insects are a much more sustainable source of protein. A case in point being crickets, by the way. They need 6 times less feed than cattle, 4 times less than sheep, twice less than pigs and chicken to produce the same amount of protein. That is according to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. Also, the thing with insects is that you can farm them anywhere, in any environment. They use less space and water and produce lower emissions. And above all, they are full of nutrients. So don't be surprised if you encounter a plate full of insects in the future. Write to us and let us know what you think about that. Some food for thought for you, quite literally. Shifting focus for now, Paris is getting all geared up to host the 2024 Olympics. With just a few weeks left for the sporting extravaganza, visitors might be able to enjoy a ride on a flying taxi at the Seine River. The French government has given the go-ahead for the construction of a floating landing pad. The landing site for flying taxis will be set up on the Seine near the Austerlitz railway station in southeastern Paris. While this is not the first vertiport in Paris, the Austerlitz site will be the first to be built within the main city. Vertiports are airports for vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. The Paris vertiport will be allowed to operate until the 31st of December and can only operate between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Moreover, only 2 flights per hour and a total of 900 flights overall will be allowed during the period. Meanwhile, many city officials are against the idea of flying taxis. They believe that flying taxis will lead to a rise in noise pollution, greenhouse gas emissions and excessive energy consumption. As per reports, the City Hall is likely to challenge the French government's decision in court. A groundbreaking clinical trial brings hope to the fight against HIV for young women in Africa. A pharmaceutical study in South Africa and Uganda has found the antiretroviral drug highly effective in preventing HIV. Our reporter Calvin Ongmu getting you more. Take a look.
South Africa has over 7 million HIV victims, marking one of the highest rates of the virus across the globe. But recent clinical trials are holding out hope for treatment. A twice-yearly injection is showing groundbreaking results.
Just this month, we have had the results of Purpose 1. This is a phase 3 clinical trial testing the efficacy of lenacapavir, long-acting, pre-exposure, prophylactic, injectable. This clinical trial has shown the extraordinary results that all the women in the lenacapavir arm were protected against HIV. In other words, they did not acquire HIV.
The clinical trial compares the impact of a 6-month injection of lenacapavir to the ingestion of daily pills to protect against HIV. Experts like Professor Becker, the principal investigator for the South African part of the study, are hopeful that as the trials progress into the open label phase, the injection will be a significant aid in the HIV prevention toolbox.
According to Gilead Sciences, within the next couple of months, the company will submit the dossier with all the results to a number of country regulators, particularly the Ugandan and the South African regulators. Experts hope that this new drug will be adopted into WHO and country guidelines. They are also hoping to see the drug being tested in more studies to understand better how to incorporate it into real-world settings. This is Calvin Olmo from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION World is One.
The Greek island of Naxos, which is the country's biggest water reservoir, has dried, with the country receiving little or no rain in months. Authorities turning to portable desalination units as the country prepares to host a flood of tourists during the peak season. Our next report telling you more.
The Greek island of Naxos's biggest reservoir has been sucked dry, and with the country's islands set to flood with a record number of summer tourists, the strain on water supplies has rarely been heavier, officials, farmers and scientists say. Naxos is a mountainous island with a population of just 20,000, but its beauty and weather attracts tens of thousands of visitors each day over peak season. The prospect has hotel owners like Vangelis Katsiris on edge.
In recent years, there's been a problem with water shortages, and this year in particular, we are experiencing it more intensely.
Most of Greece has seen little or no rain in months, with the impact of climate change bringing higher temperatures, erratic rainfall and wildfires. The island's 2 reservoirs currently hold a third of last year's levels, the equivalent of just a few dozen Olympic swimming pools. 3 portable desalination units have been secured to treat seawater to make it safe to drink. Mayor Dimitris Lianos says that should cover the shortfall for houses, hotels and pools.
We believe there will be some problems, not daily, but in some areas, some higher regions. But we believe there will not be serious problems such as water cuts in villages. We believe things will go well, and that is why we took all these measures.
Other industries, though, won't be so fortunate. Farmers won't receive any of the treated water and will have to rely on wells contaminated by seawater aquifers. They say this contamination happens when the wells are empty enough for the salty water to creep in. It threatens Naxos's famous potatoes, grown by farmers like Stelios Vathrakokoilis, who says the use of salty irrigation water will halve his yields.
It's a big disappointment. We humans did not succeed in foreseeing that climate change was going to knock on our doors as well as the rest of the world. And if this continues, may the Virgin Mary help us. That's all I can say.
Countries across the Mediterranean are looking for ways to back up their water supplies by using desalination. But suppliers say units were in short supply this summer due to soaring demand. And climate experts fear the worst is yet to come, saying once the effects of drought become visible, it is too late to take action.
Time now for Gravitas Recall. It is the 10th of July, and on this day, decades ago, Boris Yeltsin was sworn into office as Russia's first elected president. This was in the year 1991. The ceremony was held at the State Kremlin Palace. Boris Yeltsin presided over the demise of the Soviet Union and Russia's transition to a free market. Early in 1992, he ended government price subsidies and controls over food and other consumer goods, while also allowing the growth of free markets. Yeltsin's economic shock therapy meant also the rise of the oligarchs, also corruption and a decline in living standards. Yeltsin was the first elected president of the Russian Republic, winning 57% of the vote in the June election. In his inauguration speech, the leader said that the state cannot guarantee or deliver everything to everyone. He said, quote, "The initiative and entrepreneurship of the citizens will provide for the welfare of the families of Russia and will become the source of the country's revival of our state," quote unquote. This was the first inauguration of Boris Yeltsin. He was re-elected in 1996. The second inauguration of the leader as the president of Russia took place on the 9th of August 1996. He retired abruptly on the 31st of December 1999. He had said back then that he had decided Russia must enter the new millennium with new politicians. Who succeeded him? Vladimir Putin, the current president of Russia. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching. Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
We are not going back to ECOWAS. We are better alone. Sahel military chiefs mark divorce from West African bloc ECOWAS, with the organization opening a parallel summit amid political turmoil in the region. Parents and civil society groups in Kenya sound the alarm over the rise in abduction of protesters following the anti-government protests that left more than 35 people dead. And Palestinian karate champion Maiz El-Bostami hopes to accomplish her dream of representing her home Gaza in international competitions, starting with her new home, Egypt. Wild of Africa at these times on WION, Wild is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Economic turmoil and global unrest have cast a shadow over President Joe Biden's approval ratings.
The rockets are continuing to be fired by Hamas in Gaza, although at a slower rate than previously.
So, right now, we are with the volunteers from the Aleppo municipality. They are still trying to go to the rescue for the people they can find out.
India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injured have been moved, 61 people are confirmed dead, and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
For WION, World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to start again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
Economic turmoil and global unrest have cast a shadow over President Joe Biden's approval ratings.
The rockets are continuing to be fired by Hamas in Gaza, although at a slower rate than previously.
So, right now, we are with the volunteers from the Aleppo municipality. They are still trying to go to the rescue for the people they can find out.
India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injuries have been moved. 61 people are confirmed dead and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
For WION, World is One.
Faster, higher, stronger. Words that mean so much on a sporting pitch every 4 years.
ओलंपिक मेडल ने मुझे ये सिखाया कि किस तरीके से अपने आप को संभालना है.
The world's best sporting talents are assembling in Paris later this month. The quest for an Olympic medal is sport's greatest pursuit.
I think people are looking at the Olympics with a lot of hope. More than 200 countries all coming together.
The Olympic Games return to the French capital after a century.
There's not really any cities that compare to it.
Catch all the build-up to the Paris Games on WION. World is One.